What's up, YouTube? My name is Ray, the Prophet. I wanted to make a video about ShockofGod's challenge to atheists to prove that atheism is both accurate and correct. Now, I'm a former Catholic and a former Christian. I was Christian for about 19 years until I got to college, and I started listening to different points of view from different people who did not share the same beliefs as me. Now, as a former Christian, I think it's very easy to prove that atheism is true and that there isn't a God, but a lot of Christians don't agree. They really seem to feel that no atheist can prove that atheism is true, but I'm going to do the best of my ability. Now, there's a lot of other people on YouTube, the Amazing Atheist for one thing, Tool Time, Peter, and Coughlin616, who have made videos that they can prove that atheism is accurate and correct, and their videos are probably much more thought out and better than mine, because this is my first video, so it's probably not going to be the best video ever, I'll admit that, but I feel like I could prove that atheism is accurate and correct. 1. The Bible. Now, the Bible is the basis of the Christian faith, and even though the Bible has been disproven for many years, Christians still harp on that as their proof that God exists. These stories were written, they were written by God, so therefore God exists. Well, they were written, but they were not written by God, they were written by man. In many cases, they were written hundreds, maybe even thousands of years after they allegedly happened. So, what I like to compare this to is the game in kindergarten, where you stand in a line, you whisper one thing in somebody's ear, and by the time it gets to the end of the line, it's changed. People change things to fit their own interests. So therefore, stories that Jesus existed, stories that Jesus did these miraculous things, could be only to fit somebody's interest. It does not mean that they are actually true. It does not mean they actually happened. It simply means that somebody may have misconstrued something as being a miracle when it may in fact have been something that could be easily explainable nowadays. Second thing is that you can't convince a Christian that atheism is true, because Christians are so convinced that it is that no matter what you argue, you're never going to convince them. It's like telling an 8-year-old kid that there is no Santa Claus. For 8 years of his life, he's woken up, come downstairs on Christmas morning, and there have been presents under the tree addressed to him from Santa. He's also left cookies and milk out every Christmas Eve, and every Christmas morning, the cookies and the milk are gone. Well, naturally, the kid is going to believe there's Santa Claus, because he's going to take these small token examples and say, I've come to the conclusion that there is a Santa Claus. Presents under the tree are addressed from him, and the cookies and the milk I've left out for him are gone. They're just token examples. They're not proof that there is a Santa Claus. However, he's going to use his reasoning to convince himself that these two things have proven beyond a shadow of doubt that there's a Santa Claus. God is the same thing. There is nothing on this planet that proves there's a God. There's just certain things that people have looked at and said, this is absolutely proof of God. Now, no matter how hard you try to convince somebody, no matter how much you can argue with that 8-year-old kid, he's never going to believe you. Because he's so convinced, he's got it so engraved in his mind that there's a Santa Claus because of A and B. A and B equals C to him. Christians are the same thing. Although they cannot prove that there's a God, they've taken what they've seen and what they've been told, and they've come to the conclusion that these two things together prove that there's a God. And that's simply irrational thinking. That's not a rational way to think. And human beings are irrational anyway. So people think irrationally. However, it's irrational to think that there's a God simply because you're told there's a God. So basically, in conclusion, what we're told, what we've seen, and what we believe cannot entirely convince us that there is a God. We need proof. We need to actually be able to use our senses to prove that there's a God. You can't just say, somebody told me there's a God, so there's a God. You can't say, well, there's a beautiful sunset outside, so there must be a God. There needs to be something that absolutely proves that there's a God in order for us to believe that there's a God. And there's nothing on this planet that can absolutely 100% convince me that there is a God. So I don't have to convince you. If you want to believe it, whatever, I don't care. Just don't sit here and act all righteous, that you're God's children and you're all going to heaven and all us atheists are going to hell. You know what? The hell with it. If I'm going to hell, good. I'm not going to sit here and live my life the way some God wants me to live my life, simply because I'm told that that's how he wants me to live. And the final point I'm going to make is, if you want to believe it, believe it. You shouldn't have to be convinced by us, because I'm not convinced by you. You cannot convince me that there is a God, no matter how hard you try. I don't care. I have family members, I have friends. I pretty much everybody I know is a Christian. I only know a couple of atheists, maybe a few, a handful in my own personal life. So therefore, you know what? If you want to believe in God, the more power to you. Believe in God. It doesn't make any difference in my life. Good luck to you. It doesn't matter to me whether you believe me or not, but you're never going to convince me that there is a God, and I'm never going to convince you that there isn't a God, so why are you bothering asking us this question?